President Trump is getting the silent treatment.
I've never walked into a room so silent before.
The nation's top military brass stood at attention. No applause, no cheers, in fact, no reaction whatsoever.
This is don't laugh, you're not allowed to do that. You know what, just have a good time.
As the 800 generals and admirals listened to the commander-in-chief, they sat bolt upright, hands on their laps. Even when he cracked jokes, you could hear a pin drop.
I'm very careful, when I walk downstairs, like I'm on stairs, like these stairs, I walk very slowly. So one thing with Obama, I had zero respect for him as a president, but he would bop down those stairs. I've never said, da-da-da-da-da-da, bop, bop, bop.
Protocol dictates that you're quiet. You don't say a word. You listen. That's taught at day one as soon as they get into the military, and it's throughout their whole career.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth also addressed the brass, and his speech is drawing fire today for targeting overweight recruits.
Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
These are the faces of our U.S. generals as a draft-dodging felon lectured them on how to do their jobs. And I want you to take a good look at these guys. The utter shame and disappointment they feel sitting there listening to the rambling drivel that this guy has been saying. Trump literally walked on stage and was met with complete silence and tried to actually ask for applause. I mean, I really can't emphasize the variety of reactions, holding his head and face in shame at what he is witnessing. These are the faces of our decorated military leaders, utterly ashamed at what our country is being led by.
Imagine a room so electric with tension, yet clocked in silence. A stage where the most powerful in uniform refuse the easiest applause. Now, a moment so loaded yet unspoken, that it speaks louder than any other speech. And so in America, generals and admirals are being quietly hailed not for their orders, not for their salutes, but for their refusal to bow. Their silence wasn't empty, it was a statement, and the people saw it. Now, welcome. This is where allegiance meets conscience, where power meets principle. And now let's dive into what that silence really meant and why so many Americans are applauding not the words that were spoken, but the words that were left unsaid.
Move out and draw fire, because we are the War Department. Godspeed.
Room, attention.
Make no mistake, the reaction by 99% of our generals and admirals today was a form of protest.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane.
All right, generals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Please take your seats. We've heard from me, so now Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, Pete. Great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This America, God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
They clapped. They all applauded for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They were all silent for Pete Kegsbreath. And at the end of Donald Trump's speech, I counted 4 generals that were clapping for him out of an estimated 800 or so. And my very first thought was, those are probably 1-stars that are hoping Donald Trump and Pete Kegsbreath will fire some disloyal 2 to 4-star generals so that they can get an instant promotion. Because as my friends that are in the service active duty and my veteran friends would say, there's always at least one rat fuck. So I do want to put out a message of hope. This, to me, said a big resounding protest. And that if the fateful day happens where Donald Trump and Pete Kegsbreth do issue the ultimate of unlawful orders, as I have said on numerous times, our military will split. And that will be the beginning of the end of this fascist regime.
Nearly 800 of America's top military leaders were summoned from around the globe, apolitical officers who remained silent as their commander-in-chief took the stage and offered this greeting.
You can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future.
That set the tone for more awkward moments to come, including the president's suggestion that dangerous U.S. cities like those where National Guard are currently deployed should be used as training grounds for U.S. troops.
This is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within.
Illinois Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth, an Iraq War veteran, said Trump's proposal is illegal
and unconstitutional. You cannot deploy our military onto the streets of our cities.
The word I kept hearing from them was embarrassment, because if you look at that picture and you listen or have viewed what happened yesterday in Quantico, you saw myriad numbers of Silver Star awards. You saw myriad Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars, Combat Infantry badges, and they were being lectured on how to do push-ups and lose weight and shave, and it was truly mortifying. But the larger question is, going forward, what happens to the military with this internal dissension that you can seemingly feel when you witness an event like yesterday?
When you look at those faces, it's what I predicted when I was on the show the other day, and that you're going to get poker faces and a stoicism that was reflective of professionalism. But truthfully, those individuals will leave that room or left that room yesterday, and they'll start discussing and analyzing how they can implement some of the lawful orders that they got. Okay, great, we can buck up the standards. We can take a look at the kinds of things to get some soldiers, not all, certainly not even the majority, back in better shape. Take a look at what our ranks look like. But there were also soldiers and all ranks of services in that audience that said, wait a minute, when they were writing down the same kind of checklist that I was writing down, saying, wait a minute, we can't do that, or we shouldn't do that, or this is a true violation of what we are as professionals, or hey, I've got women in my ranks who are performing admirably. Why should I kind of lump them all together like the secretary did? Or I'm certainly now going to debate with myself, what am I going to say if I'm asked to go on the street and conduct illegal actions? And I guarantee you that the people in that audience will not execute illegal orders.
I sat through Donald Trump's entire speech to the generals, so you don't have to, and these are my takeaways of what I can only describe as a poison shit word salad sandwich because of the amount of dangerous, detestable crap that came out of his mouth that sounded really more like the ramblings of a lunatic. He starts off addressing this room full of generals by saying, I built the military. Then he calls them central cast members and says, we won every war, World War I, World War II, everything after, everything before, and then we went woke and changed it from the Department of War to the Department of Defense, and we're going to fix that. Keep in mind that some of the worst things that he's saying on this list are the most flippant and offhand. Like, he doesn't want us to notice or even catch that he might have said it or notice that it was even important in the first place. We are awakening the warrior spirit that built this nation, taming the Great Plains. He says there's record recruitment in the military now that he's president. It will be a big insult to the country if I don't get the Nobel Prize. They'll pay in hell if they don't sign for it. He rambles about merit. People had jobs that weren't qualified. Now that has changed. We got away from merit for a long time. Now we aren't politically correct anymore. This country was set up for political correctness, but you never can be great like that. We will not be politically correct when it comes to defending this country. In the big announcement, $1 trillion in 2026 on the military invested, followed by dead silence in the crowd. I hope you love it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you love it. That's a lot of money. Dead silence.
There seems to be a lot of people that think that the generals and admirals were not allowed to clap. They must not have seen when General Dan Kane came out, because he came out first and he was introduced. He is the General for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I would like to show you that video, and you tell me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane.
All right, generals, admirals, senior leaders.
So there you have it. Sounds to me like there was some applause, right? And I think that those individuals were sending a message after what they heard, when they were basically being told that we're going to start attacking our American cities. People can now start putting, drill instructors can put their hands on recruits. We are taking away resources to report things that should not be going on those hotlines. And I mean, just a host of other things. So I think the silence was deafening for many reasons, and it was a message, and it was heard loud and clear.
I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military, because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city with an incompetent governor, stupid governor.
That to me was the most scary part of the entire speech. I mean, there was a lot of rambling, there was a ton of lies, but the scariest part was when the president talked about using the military and using our cities as a training ground for the United States military. Now, the military has done training in cities before, but that's not what I think he's talking about here. He's talking about using the military in ways that we should not see in America. And I'm very worried about this. I think that the whole part of bringing these generals and admirals back here was to discuss this type of thing. And it should scare us all. This is something that we just don't do in America. We have police forces to fight crime, and we should be, putting money into those police forces, not sending American troops that are trained for war to American cities.
When a leader demands loyalty, there's no more potent pushback than stillness. When hundreds of America's top military minds gathered, summoned across continents, the expectation was roaring applause, affirmations, and the rousing cheers that follow a rousing call. But what happened instead was harsh, not awkwardness, purpose, not uncertainty, resolve. Now, the silence is that in that hall was not passive, it was vigilant, and generals and admirals schooled in discipline, in chain of command, in protocol, they are not unfamiliar with ceremonial applause. Yet they withheld it. The silence was their refusal to be turned into a prop, the reluctance to be weaponized. And in refusing to praise a commander-in-chief whom unlit a demagogue, they drew a line, not merely against one man, but against the degradation of office, against the conversion of the military's duty into political theater. That silence rippled beyond the walls. It insisted the nation to pay attention, because in those unspeaking moments, viewers had what words could no longer capture. The loyalty is to the Constitution, not a personality. The duty is to a country, not a campaign. The respect is for integrity, not for spectacle. And America, wary of noise, recognized a rare thing, restraint as resistance. And when they refused to applaud, they didn't become ambiguous, they became clear. They denied the optics of easy veneration. They denied the narrative that power is unquestioned. They denied the theater in favor of substance. And the silence said, we will not be used, and millions felt it across the land. In that refusal, there is courage, because silence is risky. In a system built on visibility, on signaling to abstain is to risk being misread. But that risk becomes power when the act of not reacting becomes a reaction. And so the silence gave space for citizens to think, to question, and even to stand. The void they left behind is now filled with outrage, curiosity, and hope. And so Americans are applauding, not because the generals endorsed them, but because they refused to be moved for them, because in silence they held the line, because sometimes the loudest statement is the one left unsaid. And so we watch, we listen, we feel, and when the silence is the signal, the world leans in. The generals and admirals didn't break ranks, they held rank, and with dignity, with restraint. And the people saw and applauded for that alone.